and welcome back to the workshop. It's the end of my flying season and it's time to fix things. And to do that, I need more tools from Dubro. Today, I need to replace a tail wheel control system on one of my models. It's just old and tired and needs to be refreshed. And what better way to do that than with Dubro? So Dubro has three different sizes. We've got a 20 to 60 size, a 40 to 90 size, and a 60 to 120 size. You'll notice that these two packages cover the entire range of sizing, but we have something in the middle that makes up the difference, that covers that overlap. Now, the reason that that's there is because there's a wide variety of models out there. But in our case, we're going to go with the 40 to 90 size because it offers a slightly larger tail wheel than I currently have on this model. And it should give me some better control on the grass surface that I fly off of. So let me get that model here on the bench, and I'm going to move you around so that you can see what I'm doing and see how these get put together. All right, so from looking at this assembly here, you can see a number of things that are going on. We have a main mount onto the fuselage for the assembly, as well as a secondary mount for the springs that control the steering mechanism. So as the rudder moves, it steers the tail wheel. And you can see how things are just a little tired. They're bent and broken up, and it's not ideal. So I'm going to take apart the package and show you each of the pieces as it relates to this assembly so that you understand what we're replacing. So I'm going to start with the main bracket here, and you can see already why I chose this bracket. The bracket's about the same size as the old ones, a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter, this whole assembly, because all of this is metal. So giving me a little bit more nose weight is not going to hurt the airplane that much. It's going to be actually playing in its favor for this particular model. So while the holes are not the same space apart, that's okay. I've got a nice thick ply mounting plate here. And with that, all of these springs, all this stuff can go away. But we also have a control horn that will be assembled as part of the tail wheel as well. So you've got these two pieces in our kit that we're going to be using as in conjunction with each other. This piece is a little funny looking, for good reason though. What you can do is make a cut into your rudder, and this will slide on, and you can use some additional spacers like wood or some scrap plastic to make up the difference. And so this should slide over top and then be able to use as a control horn input for your tail wheel. The way that you connect the bracket to the tail wheel is by the use of springs. Our springs come with ends that are ready to be bent. So in order to bend those, you'll have to have some needle nose pliers in order to make some pretty tight radiuses as you do the bending. These are called T-nuts or blind nuts. They're also included in the kit, and you can use these to install through the model. And the T-nut would go from the bottom side. And as you install, the compression will force these tanes into the wood so that it grips it and doesn't turn. You can include some epoxy or CA, but I highly recommend that you be very judicious with that, because if you get any of those glues inside of the nut, it's going to foul your threads. So be very, very careful with that. So with our parts all laid out, what we have, what we can use, I'm going to go ahead and start taking this apart. And let's see how bad the damage really is. As we have this model assembled, this came to me secondhand. I've been flying it a lot. It's been a lot of fun, but it's just a little tired. My steering is very vague when I'm coming back after a nice landing. And so I just want to make sure that I can control the model, be a little bit safer in the pits. All right, so again, we've got all of these parts that are kind of interplayed with each other. And given where my location is for this, I kind of don't want to move this forward or aft because I don't know what's under here and I also can't get to it. But I know that there's ply right here, so I'm going to stick with this location. So in order to do that, I'm going to stay with at least one of these holes. I think I'm going to stay with that one because it gets, let's see, how are those? Okay, so yeah, we've got some figuring out to do, but I do think I want to stick with this front original hole. Now we're gonna do two new holes. We've got them safely spread apart, and let me get my pin vise. Having the right tool for the job always helps. All right, so we've got the pin vise and an appropriately sized drill bit. Because I don't have access to use these, I'm going to set them aside. I'll save them in my parts bin, and I'm going to use the original wood screws that I've got on this kit. It should work just fine, but we're going to have to get a little creative here and make sure that the holes are fairly straight. Again, we can correct with any steering issues if this isn't exactly perfect. And the pin vise makes easy work. We're not going too heavy-handed with a drill. Just using hand tools here. There we go. Nice and snug on that. All right, so roughly centered up. And another hole. All right, so next thing we're gonna have to do is take this nut. Didn't know that was a nut at first, did you? Take the nut off of the steering wheel shaft. That's gonna go in there, just like that. It's a little snug right now, but it'll loosen up over time, promise. Next up, we're gonna take our control arm and we're gonna put that on there as well. Oh, looks like we need to loosen that screw a little bit. Sure enough, you can look through the hole to see that beforehand, but there we go. Okay, so I just want to point out, some people may call this into question. So there's really no right or wrong way to do this. Because the screw goes through the plastic and the metal piece, you can install it with either the metal facing the plastic or the plastic facing the plastic. It really isn't going to matter in terms of security. I'm just going to install it this way because this way seems to work. There we go. There it goes. There it goes. Okay, so next up, we're going to try to get this as square as possible. Look down, look head on. And then we can tighten this with the same screwdriver. Okay, so normally if we were going to be using the included bracket, ideally you would be installing this next. But since I'm not going to do that on this model, it's a little difficult to show you exactly what to do. But like I said, this part of the rudder, you're going to have to cut a little bit away using an X-Acto blade. And you would be cutting just a little bit here to make room for the thickness of the plastic so that you could slide that down there. Now I've seen people try to drill a hole through this and secure it with a screw or a bolt of some kind. It's really not that needed. Some basic glue to hold it in place will be fine. Again, this is just for a tail wheel. This isn't controlling anything other than your maneuvering on the ground. I've seen models work just fine with just a standard swiveling tail wheel as well. It's a little trickier. It requires a little more finesse to control it that way, but this certainly does help. Because of the position here, we don't have much room to place the springs between here and here. So that's why I'm not using that in this particular installation. I could try to make a notch and put it here, but I don't really like that idea that much. And I think it would make really ugly installation here. So with that in mind, I am going to replace the old T-bracket that was here and move on from there. All right, with the T-bracket replaced, we're gonna not forget about our nut. And we're gonna reinstall the nut. Now, before I screw this in all the way, I'm gonna go into my drawer and find a thread locker. Just a drop, all you need, just a tiny little drop. And then screw it on all the way. And that's it. Ideally, you would also want to use some thread locker on the set screw. I will do that after I've done all of my trimming on the ground, because you can still adjust this based on where the tail wheel is. I'll show you what I mean once I get the springs installed. All right, so with the springs in your hand, you're gonna roughly try to center it for where you're going to be, and you can make loops or hooks or whatever your heart desires. I generally do hooks since this is a pull and we are going to be in tension the whole time. I have also seen people that install these where they use both of these holes. I would recommend that you use these holes for the width of your model that's appropriate. You get a little bit more mechanical leverage on the outer one than the inner one, so that's why I'm going with the outer ones. But also keep in mind that you can use this wire to go through both of these holes if that's what you wish to do for a little bit of security. Up to you. You don't have to, but it's an option. And on the back end, I'm going to do just another simple hook as well, right like that. So now when I do the other one, both springs will be under tension. All right, so sometimes when we do things, we don't do them exactly the same. And that's certainly true on creating these springs. All right, so there could be one spring that is ever so slightly longer or shorter than the other one. And because of that, you're gonna have uneven tension of the springs. So as the rudder moves, it may not be entirely centered. So that's why I'm saying that this set screw, I'm not going to put thread locker on it until I take it to the field and fly it around and have it exactly where I want it to be. And then I can use a marker and I can draw a mark on the hub as well as the arm so that they line up. That way, when I take the screw out and apply the thread locker, I can make sure they're lined up correctly and then screw it together, make sure everything is snug, and I don't have to worry about it. Well, thanks for stopping by today. I'm glad that I could share this technique with you and some of the other things that Dubro has to offer. As you can see, I've got some more work to do on this model, so I'll leave you for now. But if you need any other hardware, make sure you check out Dubro.com because I'm pretty sure they'll have it for you.